the Ipswich Borough Centre, Salvation Army, Working Proceedings.
It has been said that you cannot please all the people all of the time, but you might be able to please some of the people some of the time. That will certainly be true in your job as it is in mine. I'm mindful of the enormity of the task that lies ahead of you tonight, and I thank you for the honour of being able to come and to speak to you. So whether you're a person of faith or not, please allow me to pray to my God for you. Dear God, let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfil our callings, for sustenance and friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honour of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us, even so, from your boundless and gracious nature. In the scriptures you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of town officials, and in particular for this assembled council. I'm asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our town of Ipswich. In your name I pray. Amen.
Please note that the meeting may be filmed and photographed. Could I also remind everyone who has a mobile phone that it should be switched off, switched to silent mode or switched off for the process of the meeting. Thank you. Agenda item number 1. I have received apologies from Councillor Colony and Councillor Chris Stewart. Are there any others? May I sign the unconfirmed minutes of the council meeting held on the 28th of January 2015 through record? Agenda item number 3. Are there any changes to the order of business that's printed on the agenda? No? Thank you. We now move to item number 4, declarations of interest. In accordance with the delegated authority, the monitoring officer has granted dispensation as follows. 1. To all members in respect of agenda item number 7. The dispensation has been granted for the setting of the council tax precept, and also in respect of members' scheme of allowances as referred to in the proposed amended motion. Members are therefore not required to exclude themselves from the meeting and may participate in the debate and vote on these items. Are there any councillors who wish to declare interest in any items of business on the agenda in addition to those that have been circulated? We move to agenda item number 5, Mayor's Communications, and I believe you all have a copy of those in front of you this evening. Just to let you know that there are a few seats left for the ball. If anybody's interested and would like to come, you're very welcome. Thank you. We move now to agenda item number 6, questions. Can I please remind people that supplementary questions must relate to the original question and not be preceded by a statement. Could I ask those members of the public who are asking questions to please use the table in front of the meeting to do so. We now move to question number 1, Councillor Carnell to Councillor Jones. Councillor Carnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, how much in costs has been awarded against the Borough Council as a result of lost planning appeals since May 2011?
Councillor Jones.
There have been 4 cost awards against the council in that time. In total, these amount to just under £40,000.
Councillor Carnell, you supplementary. Thank you. Question number 2, Councillor Carnell to Councillor Ellesmere. Councillor Carnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last September, it was announced that the council was launching a gateway to the waterfront design competition for the development of the area between Stoke Bridge and the Georgia Glass House. Local architects were invited to submit plans for the development of the area. What progress has been made to date, please?
Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A report is planned for the next Executive Committee meeting, which will set out significant progress that has been made following the resolutions of Executive last August to try and kick-start development on the waterfront at Stoke Bridge. This will include an update on progress on the tender process for the design competition.
Thank you, Councillor Carnell. Thank you. We move to question number 3. It's Councillor Strode to Councillor Jones. Councillor Strode.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the autumn of 2012, the Labour administration goes back into a £7 million multi-screen cinema complex to drive the redevelopment of the bus market shopping complex. Can the portfolio officer provide the council with an update on the progress?
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors will recall that Planning and Development Committee unanimously... Councillors will recall that Planning and Development Committee unanimously agreed the cinema proposal for the Better Market Shopping Centre. I understand that few cinemas are no longer interested in taking forward that proposal now. However, I do remain optimistic that the redevelopment will take place, potentially under a different operator. It is still my view, and the view of this council and our partner organisations, that a cinema would be a very good anchor for the Better Market.
Thank you. Councillor Strode, supplementary. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. When Councillor Jones meets with the Westgate constituents, do they tell that their town centre, our town centre, is better, more vital, more exciting than it was when she took over as portfolio of Ipswich's economic development all 4 years ago.
What's that to do with the cinema?
It's related to town centre's economic development, which the cinema would have been part of. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to say that they usually talk to me about the bedroom tax, the cost of living, and how hard it is to get by. I've yet to meet anybody who's mentioned the cinema, but if they did, I would say that I wholeheartedly hope we get it, because it would be transformational.
Thank you. Can we stick to the questions of food? Thank you. We now move to question number 4, and it's a question from Councillor Harson to Councillor Smart. Councillor Harson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the opening of the Cleveland car park, could the portfolio holder be kind enough to bring us up to date with the usage of the car park and the revenue obtained from that park?
Thank you. Councillor Rodney. Sorry, Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another in a long sequence of questions about Athena Hall that I've had over many months and years now from Councillor Harson, who I know was a great enthusiast for Athena Hall car park and had very high hopes for it. And I certainly share her disappointment at the length of time that it took to battle our way through the various obstacles put in by the lawyers to prevent us from opening it. But open it did in October last year. It's a 90-space car park. We've had rather disappointing usage figures since it opened, and this, I think, a certain amount of blame must be borne by Suffolk County Council, who have failed to put up the signs that we asked them to. They said that they'd be very quick to take down any that we put up as a result of them being unauthorised by them, but very slow to put them up themselves. I gather they're re-examining their procedures now. So, in the expectation that that problem will be resolved, we are, and this question does give me an opportunity to announce this, we are going to be marketing the car park, bringing it to more people's attention, with some cut price introductory offers. I'll even be given the figures here somewhere. Put the glasses back on. Yeah, first of all, we're going to make it free to users in March, and then set a 25p tariff an hour in May, and see where we go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harson. Have you reached the supplementary?
I think I have that, Mr. Mayor. I don't think my question was answered, because I don't remember being told what the revenue so far has been obtained. But I've done a little sort of research into this. This is a picture of the only sign that is available for people to park.
Is there a question?
Well, yes, I'm just coming to the question. Would the councillors not possibly that that is not sufficient, and it's easy to blame the Suffolk County Council for that? On the, I'd like to say that on the 17th of February in the morning, one car in lone splendour. The next day, one
Is there a
car.
question?
Yes.
Sir?
Just comes to
She's completely ignoring instructions you gave.
Please, can we have a question?
Yes. Would Councillor Smart not agree that after 5 or 6 years waiting for this car park to open, a lot of which was to be blamed here at the council because they were in breach of planning, is it not time that he instigated some scheme that gets people into that car park rather than it stand empty all the time?
Thank you.
First of all, I should of course have mentioned that there'd only been some £700 in revenue, which I think was the subject of the original question. And as far as instituting whatever scheme it is, I have just announced what we do intend to do about it. I of course don't know whether the photographs of the sold car in the car park were ones of Councillor Parsons' own car or not, but she's done her own. She's done her own publicity, I suppose, in relation to trying to raise the profile. As far as the signage is concerned, I think that she's illustrated only too well the problem that we've had, because the sign was not an on-street sign. What is needed is something on the approach which clearly signals to motorists well in advance of when they get to the car park where it is. And it has to be an on-street sign, and it is that we're waiting Suffolk County Council for.
Thank you. Question number 5. Question from Councillor Harsel. Question from Councillor Harsel to Councillor Rothy. Councillor Harsel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the portfolio holder be kind enough to explain why Holy Ross Park was opened an hour late on Saturday, the 14th of February, and no park patrol was in place the whole weekend?
Thank you. Councillor Rothy.
Thank you. The park gates were opened late on the 14th of February because of staff sickness, and unfortunately it took a while to arrange alternatives, but instructions were passed on the staff and the gates were opened after that. And that during the Saturday and Sunday, other staff, for example, the mobile park patrol, did make regular visits to the park, and the gates were closed and open as normal on Saturday evening and Sunday morning.
Thank you. Councillor Hart, have you supplemented?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would the portfolio holder agree that we ought to have in place some scheme that when someone is ill, if somebody can actually open the gates rather than people stand there for an hour, especially when they have to work with their dog, waiting to walk the dog. And I think it's something that should be put in place immediately and not discussed at great length.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. We do have alternative arrangements. It's unfortunate that staff sickness in this case led to the fact that the park wasn't opened, and I'm always open to suggestions. Although I would have been more open to a suggestion perhaps on the 16th of February, but rather than waiting for a full council meeting to raise it.
Thank you. Can we move to question number 6, and it's Councillor Goldsmith to Councillor Smart. Councillor Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Will the portfolio holder confirm, under current legislation, that county district and borough councils are now not able to subsidise bus routes?
Councillor Smart.
Mr. Mayor, we are not aware of any changes, either recent or proposed, to the existing legislation in relation to subsidising bus routes. More's the pity. We do live in hope that the law might be changed to make it easier in future, but until that happens, there are only limited circumstances under which we can do this.
Thank you. Councillor Goldsmith, have you supplementary?
Can the portfolio explain to me that the public meeting would not to operate essential for? When Mr. Bronson said the number 19 bus subsidy is withdrawn, and the government have now passed a rule that all bus routes have to make a profit, which you didn't disagree with.
Thank you. Councillor Smart.
I think if you, it's rather unfortunate that there isn't a recording made of such meetings. What I would hope that Councillor Goldsmith would have heard Mr. Robson say was that, in fact, the law changed many, many years ago, back in 1985, our ability to operate our own bus company as we see fit. The power to subsidise public transport services is provided by legislation to all county and district councils, and it's something that the council can provide. However, while we have the power to provide subsidies, the duty to consider the need for subsidised services rests with Suffolk County Council. They are the local authority. Now, the ability to lawfully provide such subsidies is constrained by legislation, and this was explained at the meeting in Ascension Hall. What we have to do, in order to ensure such subsidies are only provided where the service in question cannot run without them, and only in such a way as to not have a significant effect on any commercially operating services within the same area. I think the situation we have here with, I suspect you're referring to, which was the main subject of the meeting, was the Service 19. Now, the Service 19 runs every half an hour in the part of the route south of the railway line. You might call the Castle Hill bit rather than the Wickham bit. To provide any subsidy to alter that situation would require sponsoring a service which would run in competition with a registered commercial service over a significant proportion of its length. And it is that problem under the Competition Act which is what constrains us in this case.
Thank you. Question number 7. Councillor Goldsmith, Councillor Smart again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would the portfolio of Ipswich Borough when branch of car parks now used by commercial vehicles overnight, causing parking problems for the people attending meetings in the evening?
Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In recent months, parking services have moved and are now based at Grafton House. And as a result, their vans are now kept overnight at Grafton House. Our facilities management monitors the car park, and clearly fewer spaces are now available for evening meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Goldsmith, have you a supplementary? Thank you. We now move to question number 8. That's Councillor Chensi to Councillor Smart. Councillor Chensi.
Could the portfolio holder give me and residents of Stoke Park reassurance that the number 16 bus route is not under threat in any way?
Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, Councillor Churchill almost invites me to comment that, of course, as we all know, all bus routes are under threat because of the various cuts constantly made to the value of bus service operators' grants, and how all companies find it more and more difficult to make services commercially viable. However, a particular question was in relation to the number 16 route, and you might recall the history of this was that we supported the number 16 route when it was threatened with withdrawal through our public transport budget provision. The support was designed to try and ensure that the service is not just maintained, but also would move to a situation where it no longer requires subsidy. And that is the situation we now find ourselves in. So the provision of that resource was one that's had the desired effect. It's turned around the route, more people are using it. The Managing Director of Ipswich Buses has provided an assurance to me that the Service 16 remains commercially viable and is therefore not under threat of withdrawal, and nor does it need any further support.
Thank you. Councillor Chensi, you supplementary. Thank you. Question number 9, Councillor Chensi to Councillor Ellesmere. Councillor Chensi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have there been any approaches from organisations who would like to use the old police station for community activities, and if so, who were they?
Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand there's been one approach from a locally based community group about possible use of the former police station. Clearly, it would not be appropriate for me to name the organisation.
Thank you. Councillor Chensi, you supplementary.
Would Councillor Ellesmere be prepared to tell me by email separately to this meeting in confidence?
Councillor Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think probably the best thing I can do is ask Councillor Chensi to wait until the next executive meeting, where a report on the options for the future for the police station will be taken.
Thank you. Question number 10 is Mr. Howard to Councillor Smart.
London Road area. Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to be able to inform Mr. Algar that considerable work has gone on with residents through a community engagement exercise in this area to encourage them to remove their wheelie bins from the street where possible after collection day. And this has even extended to putting stickers, rather simple things, that say, please don't leave me on the street, onto the bins themselves as a reminder.
Thank you. Councillor Mr. Alva, have you ever supplemented?
Thank you for your very concise response. I was going to ask if you knew that bins on home are knocking 30% of value of properties. If you want to say yes on that.
Thank you. Mr. Councillor Smart, have you?
I'm not surprised that we get a question that reflects more of an interest in property values than anything else in terms of local amenity. But there's all sorts of things, bins on pavements, fly tip waste, all these things are enforcement issues that affect people's quality of life. What we have to do is try and enforce the situation sensitively. Not everybody has the ability to store their bins out of the street, and therefore we have to apply a bit of a common sense test and approach as to whether they've tried as far as possible to move it to the edge of the pavement without causing an obstruction. People who cause an obstruction, they will be eventually the enforcement action taken against them, but the actual presence of a bin is something that we just have to make a judgment about whether it's feasible to remove it or not.
Thank you. Question number 11 is Councillor Lockington to Councillor Jones. Councillor Lockington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did the proposed local plan for Ipswich need to have a traffic assessment of the impact on our roads in the Ipswich area? And if so, when and how did that assessment take place?
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The local plan Councillor Lockington refers to is in fact the same local plan developed and adopted by the previous administration, brought to Council by the previous portfolio holder, her Liberal Democrat colleague, Councillor Richard Atkins. And yes, it had to have a traffic assessment that was carried out for you when you were in office by the Suffolk County Council, the Highway Authority. When the traffic assessment data was submitted to the inspector in 2011, she found it sound. Now, because this question uses both past tense and present tense, I will also refer to the current local plan called strategy review, because that was then and it is now. Suffolk County Council have employed hired consultants who are currently assessing the core strategy review. They will use the 2008 model but update to reflect current conditions, and they will use new evidence, for example, the 2011 census data. And then the County Council and their consultants will present the evidence for examination of the local plan later in the year.
Thank you. Councillor Lockington, have you a supplementary?
Yes, I just apologise. Yes, I realise I use different tenses in it, and I know the teacher would spot that. But can I just say, when will the survey be made public? Will the traffic survey? And we are told from the County Council that the plan is the borough plan, and they are responsible for a traffic survey. Hence me asking, will the traffic survey be made public, or will we first know that at the assessment in public by the person who assesses the local plan?
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Mr. Mayor, as Councillor Lockington points out, the County Council is the highway authority. They're carrying out all the work on traffic assessments and they're doing that for us. Now, I will check for you with town planning manager about at what point that will be made public, because I'm actually not sure. I would guess it will be made public before the examination, but I could be wrong. I will check. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes this case. We now move to agenda item number 7, Financial Strategies and Medium-Term Financial Plan, 2015-16 onwards, including the budget for 2015-16. I would like to highlight to councillors that, in accordance with section 8.2 of the Rules of Procedure for the Council, a recorded vote will be taken on the substantive budget decision and other amendments relating to the budget decision as required by law. Please note that a copy of the consultation response has been circulated by the Section 151 officer and is included in your papers that have been tabled this evening. Also included in the pack is the proposed amendments submitted by Councillor Chency under Part 4, Section 1, Paragraph 13 of the Constitution. You will also find a note of advice from the monitoring officer together with recommendations of the last independent remuneration panel. I will allow each of the group leaders up to 10 minutes for their first speech. All other councillors will have up to 5. Councillor Ellesmere to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is now the 4th budget since Labour took control of the Ipswich Borough Council in 2011. And if George Osborne had delivered what he promised, this should have been our easiest one yet. Back in 2010, he said the budget deficit would be eliminated by 2015 and austerity would be at an end. Instead, the government is forecast to borrow more than £90 billion this year. We have promised cuts in each and every year of the next Parliament, taking public spending back to levels of the 1930s. From April, this council will have its funding cut by £1.3 million. We anticipate that the government's revenue support grant will continue to be cut year on year until it has been whittled away to zero. The days, Mr. Mayor, when Councillor Carr used to complain that he wasn't getting a big enough increase in funding from a Labour government now seem like a golden age in comparison. Thankfully, Labour councillors are a cynical bunch, and we were doubtful from the outset of this government's competence. Our budgetary plans have always been predicated on the failure of George Osborne's economic plan, and it is now abundantly clear that we were right to do so. Conservative councillors could do well to reflect on the mess this council's finances would be in if we had taken at face value, as they did, the promises George Osborne and David Cameron made in 2010. However, knowing that cuts are coming and dealing with them are two separate issues. It is going to be increasingly difficult to protect services that Ipswich people rely on and have taken for granted. Mr. Mayor, despite these swinging government cuts, Labour-run Ipswich Borough Council has still been able to achieve a great deal in the past year while continuing to balance the books. We have continued to protect frontline council services. We've maintained our funding to partner organisations. We have continued our council house building programme, something the Conservatives still refer to as a vanity project, with the occupation of the first houses on Bailey Close. This is the largest council house scheme in Ipswich for 50 years. We've gained official living wage employer accreditation and improved pay for apprentices. We've provided a town centre shop with a credit union to enable them to take on rip-off payday lenders directly. We've continued to support the town centre with our successful Quids In car parking promotion. We purchased a sugar beet site at Sproughton, which will stop inappropriate development and create hundreds of new jobs. We've helped kickstart development of quality office buildings on Princess Street. We've provided a modern new homeless families unit. And, Mr. Mayor, we have successfully implemented single status harmonisation, something the previous Conservative and Liberal Democrat administration tried and failed to deliver for 7 years. Mr Mayor, we are continuing to deliver on the promises we made when we took control of the council, protecting frontline services, building new houses, bringing new jobs and growth to Ipswich. We are not a party that says one thing in opposition and does the opposite when elected. However, given the scale of government cuts, the council must continue to make large savings. Last year we set out our strategy for making those savings over the next 3 years through a mixture of reviews of every service we provide and a number of so-called big-ticket items. This strategy is delivering the savings we need. The service reviews have already identified £140,000 of annual savings, with a further £225,000 in the pipeline. Big-ticket items have already achieved or identified savings of £1.3 million a year in 2017-18. Of particular note are the savings resulting from the new vehicle maintenance contract and the proposed purchase of the council's headquarters, Grafton House. In addition, £500,000 worth of annual savings have been released by maintaining many budgets at last year's levels rather than increasing them by inflation. And we have identified a further £160,000 of savings in services yet to go through the service review process. But, Mr Mayor, despite the millions of pounds worth of savings we've delivered, the scale of government cuts mean that if we wish to protect services in the future, we must look at increasing council tax. A growing number of councils across the country of all political persuasions are now taking this decision, and not just councils. Suffolk's Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner, despite being elected on the promise not to increase council tax, has now bowed to the inevitable and is increasing his precepts to try and mitigate the effects of huge government cuts to the police budget. Ipswich Borough Council's increase this year is the lowest increase for 3 years. It is lower than the September reference RPI rate of 2.3%. It is lower than this year's government business rate increase of 2%, and it's lower than the Conservative Police and Crime Commission's proposed increase of 1.997%. The majority of residents in Ipswich will pay an extra 9p a week or less, and it is equivalent to a 0.38% increase on household total bills. When the previous Conservative and Liberal Democrat administration lost office, their overarching objective was that Ipswich Borough Council tax would be lower in real terms in 2015 than it was in 2010. Tonight's budget means that we have met their objective, and then some. Council tax will be 9% lower in real terms than in 2010, a saving of £23 a year for the average council taxpayer. Now, Mr Mayor, that was the sole limit of the ambition of the previous administration. However, because of the tough decisions we have made to cut costs and maintain income, we are able again to reallocate funding to make a number of investments to improve Ipswich. We will increase the council's support for investment to bring new jobs to our town. We will introduce a package of support to bring empty town centre shops back into use. We will support projects to improve educational achievement in the Ipswich Academy and Suffolk New Academy catchment areas. We will speed up the resolution of antisocial behaviour by providing greater out-of-hours support in the council's noise nuisance service. We'll provide improved support for tenants renting in the private housing sector. We will cement Ipswich's growing reputation as a regional centre for the arts by increasing funding to our Arts Council national portfolio organisations. We will make a major contribution towards the UCS Innovation Centre, and we will build a new multi-storey car park at Crown Street. And we will also, Mr Mayor, build a new sports pavilion at Ransoms, and hopefully this will finally lay to rest the false claims by our Conservative opponents that we intend to build housing on Ransoms. Mr Mayor, because of our sound management of the Council's finances, the forecast budget gap after 3 years is at its lowest level for many years. In 2011, the last year of the previous administration, the gap was £2.255 million. This year's budget predicts a gap of £1.15 million. At the same time, the forecast level of usable reserves in 3 years is now £2.6 million. In 2011, Councillor Carr was predicting that all usable reserves would already have been spent by now. Despite huge government cuts, worse than anything predicted in 2010, we are clearly managing the council's finances far better than the last administration did. The budget gap is down, our reserves have lasted longer than predicted, and council tax is lower in real terms. We are protecting frontline services, building new council houses, and bringing new jobs to Ipswich. That is what we promised we would do when we were first elected in 2011. That is what we have delivered. It is a programme that has continued to be backed by Ipswich voters in every election since 2011, and I am sure it will receive their backing again in the elections this year. I commend it to the council.
Thank you. Councillor Cook, Martin Cook, second.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Labour's fourth budget, and it hasn't been an easy one. Every year has seen dramatic cuts in central government funding. This year was no exception. As noted in paragraph 2.2 of the covering report, the latest funding settlement, which was announced on the 18th of December, was even worse than we expected. We lost another £1.3 billion in annual income from central government, or 16% of the total. And that, I'm afraid, is pretty much par for the course. We've lost in total £5.86 million in revenue just over the last 5 years. You accumulate that up over the years, it's a significant sum in anyone's book. But Mr. Mayor, the continued downward trajectory is continuing, as illustrated in the bar chart of paragraph 2.5. And so it goes on. As Councillor Ellesmere said, in a few years, revenue support grant or RSG will be history. In spite of all this, our financial management, good management of the council, means that we are making progress. We've been increasing the council's collection rate, the proportion of council tax due that we actually bring in revenue year on year. We've set tough budgets and we've stuck to them. In last year, we outturned actually £3.2 million better than budget. This is really helping with our financial situation as we go forward. We do have a level of reserves which enables us to bridge the budget gap. Unlike Conservative-run Suffolk County Council, we make use of those reserves. We don't hoard them. We don't plan to add to the reserves. We make use of them, put them to work in Ipswich. Our medium-term financial plan is extending further into the future than under the Tories. We now look 3 years ahead, and we plan further ahead even than that. We have now 3 prongs to our savings strategy. First of all, the tactical savings, as we might call them, that come forward through ad hoc items in the portfolio of the working groups and the open budget process that we've been operating. Second of all, through service reviews, and thirdly, through the big ticket items. When we presented last year's medium-term financial plan, we were criticised for having 9 vague headings for items that we were going to generate savings from. I'm pleased to say that if you read this year's report, 6 of those have now crystallised into fully formed initiatives that will generate savings over the coming years. In fact, are already generating savings. You'll see that in the table in the report. 3 have more work to do. The trading company, increasing income and partnerships. But 6, we're making very firm progress on. And I've highlighted in particular the early retirement voluntary severance, which will deliver £311,000 in the coming year. We talked about some of the successes that we've had over the last year. Ones that I'm particularly proud of in my own portfolio area. The living wage accreditation, paying all council employees at least £7.85 an hour, and insisting that our contractors do the same. Improving pay for apprentices, something the Tories were against. Bringing to a close the Icelandic Bank debacle. Within the last 12 months, we've repaid, sold at auction or written off all of the debt that was over there. And we implemented single status harmonisation by way of a collective agreement, great achievements. If we talk about the capital programme, which is also covered here, we're moving towards a situation where the funding of this will move from capital receipts towards borrowing. Nonetheless, our borrowing is at historically low levels. If you look at the graph on page 25, you'll see that we're at a lower level of borrowing than the 50 million plus peak in the Tory years. And of course, interest rates are much lower now than they were then, so the interest burden is not so great. And also, I'm particularly pleased to say that the things we are investing in the capital programme are dealing with guaranteed returns, like solar, the Grafton House buyback, and other items that are replenishing the council's asset base, so good for the future. In terms of the capital programme, we're very excited by the proposals in there for further solar PV investment, particularly on council houses. Tenants will benefit from that, council's budget will benefit from that, and the environment will benefit from that. We look all round. In the HRA, of course, we're very proud of our achievements there, but it's not just about building new council houses, it's about investing in our existing stock as well, to the tune of 8 or 9 million per annum. So, Mr Mayor, this is a budget which leaves council tax increases at the lowest for 3 years. We're getting ahead of the curve on making savings. We've got the lowest budget gap for 3 years, halved to 1.15 million, and we're reducing our reliance on reserves. This is a positive budget for Ipswich.
Okay. Councillor Jackson, I understand you wish to take your amendment.
Yes, please, Mr Mayor.
Do you have a second? Thank you. Councillor Ellsworth, do you accept the amendment? No. We will now debate the amendment, and Councillor Jensen, you have up to 10 minutes.
Extra minutes. I note the reflection by Councillor Ellsworth by blaming this government for the mess left by his party, but I like to concentrate on Ipswich people and what is actually in our control. The Ipswich Conservative Group would like to look forward to an alternative to the Labour administration's budget to enable a freeze on the council tax the forthcoming year. We believe it is in the interest of the residents to reduce their outgoings whilst the country is recovering by removing unnecessary costs that do not affect frontline services, and also to take advantage of the grant that the government is giving to any council that freezes or reduces its bill. The Labour administration has told you, as I thought they would, that the Police Commissioner has submitted a similar rise to the one they are suggesting for next year. However, the Police Crime Commissioner did not A. raise his precept in the previous 2 years, and nor B. did he moan about the cost of living leading up to his decision. Instead, he made tough choices to save money, something this administration does not seem prepared to do. There is therefore no cumulative effect in his raise of 6p per week. To prove the importance of the cumulative effect, let's take council rent rises under this administration. Each yearly rise from 2012 to 2015 is as follows, working backwards: £93.8p, £182.70, £215.30, £233.63, which totals £724. However, the cumulative effect of each of these percentage rises means the actual total paid in real terms for those 4 years is an incredible £2,358. Yes, that's correct. The cumulative effect from those 4 years of the average council rent payer has resulted in them paying £2,358 over those 4 years. And when they were challenged on the rent rise, they cited this following government guidelines. And yet when the government is not only suggesting that the council tax is frozen, but they are also putting money where their mouth is by giving a grant of £136,000 for doing so, this administration is turning it down. How can that be justified to the taxpayers of Ipswich? Labour will also tell you that by freezing there will be a shortfall in years 2 and 3. Yes, we know this, and we can confirm that it will be £332,000 and £583,000 respectively. We have taken that into consideration and have other ideas for saving money. For instance, just one we would introduce immediately if we were in administration is to reduce the number of portfolio holders by 2. With just 5 as portfolio holders, we would shadow each of the heads of services, saving at least an immediate £15,000 per annum at least. We would also look at the viability of cutting the number of councillors from each ward to 2. 2022, saving at least £60,000 per year, still without any cutting of frontline services. And we have several more ideas, notwithstanding the fact that after the 3 years, despite the cuts, there will be a 4.6 million reserve pot. In fact, we've heard Councillor Ellesmere boasting about how brilliant it will be after 3 years, of which 2 million is the recommended constant, but a separate whopping 1.6 million will be available to use to balance the books. We also appreciate that there are so many unknown factors going forward. We in turn worry about any holes in the finances should this council decide to agree later budget. For instance, Mr Mayor, I would like to ask Councillor Ellesmere and Councillor Cook this. A substantial part of your budget is funded by the New Homes bonus. Suffolk as a whole will get over 3 million in New Homes bonus for the 2015-16 tax year alone. Ipswich will get 1.784 million of this. Since you will no doubt ask me what effect on future years my proposals may and how I will tackle them, what provision have you made for the slight chance that there could be a Labour government in May? While I very much hope you won't be part of it, would you be going along with the Labour policy to scrap the New Homes bonus, condemning this council to huge cuts to cover the wanton spending you have encouraged using money that your own party wants to scrap? You won't hear from Councillor Ellesmere how this coalition government policy of allowing us to keep all of our council rent receipts has allowed this council to start to build council properties, and they still haven't built as many social housing in all 4 years as we did in just 1 year. Now to the other parts of our alternative recommendations. We believe that 2 additions a year is more than enough to convey the measures of the council, alongside the various other excellent media that we have in Ipswich, our own website and social media platforms, of which some of us are regularly using to advertise the council announcements. Now for the area committees. Firstly, we have all noticed that area committees are failing to spend substantial amounts from the funds allocated to each of the wards, and that reducing each ward by £2,500 per year would not be noticeable. This would save at £40,000. For example, South West area still had £31,000 to spend at the end of January. Last but not least, we think it is wrong that councils are paid £3,760 per annum to chair 5 area committees per year. When the new system of area committees was first introduced, I actually had some sympathy for an extra allowance for the role. It was an unknown entity that required some planning with new formats and delivery, and I could see why it would require some extra work that warranted some acknowledgement in financial terms. This has all been smoothed out, and the workload derived from the role of chair is now no more than every other councillor who carries out their duty in their ward with diligence and commitment. This is just a job for the boys, literally, as there are no female area committee chairmen. I can suggest that with total accuracy, and perhaps Councillor Ellesmere might like to reply to the question of why none of those posts were ever filled by the females amongst the backbenchers. However, at this time of writing, we want to make sure that the proper protocol is followed and have allowed for half a year saving this time round, but we have since established that actually this could be implemented almost immediately. In summary, we will find the savings in this first year with the following: reduce the Ipswich angles to additions 51,000, reduce the area committee funding by £2,500 per ward, 40,000, remove the allowances paid to area chair committee, 9,400, with a lot more savings in the future, and we could say, importantly, for accepting the council tax-free grant, £136,000. I think residents will find it hard to understand if this proposal is not accepted by all councillors. The figures have been checked and verified by the council as fully accounted for, and I submit it to the full council tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Ellesmere, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I spoke earlier about Labour not being a party that says one thing in opposition and does the opposite when elected. If only that were the case with the Conservative group. At the last council meeting, and we've heard it again tonight, we were expected to believe that the Tories would impose the lower rent increases they were running the council. despite the fact that our increase was exactly what the Conservative government said we should charge, but the last time the Tories were running the council, they increased rents by 3 times that amount, and that Conservative councils across Suffolk have increased rents by more than Ipswich, and also, Mr Mayor, Councillor Chenchy had no plans for how to fund a lower rent increase. Faced with that evidence, Mr Mayor, Councillor Chenchy was forced to admit that she was just indulging in political posturing. I fear we're in a similar situation tonight. We have 3 proposals in this amendment which no one believes the Tories would ever implement if they were in power. Firstly, they propose reducing the annual to 2 editions a year. But in the 7 years they were running the council, the lowest annual circulation in the annual was 6 editions. Leading up to the general election in 2010, for some reason, it was 11 editions. The angle is a valuable marketing tool for the council. For example, since using the angle to promote the Peers Community Alarm Service, we've seen an increase in customers, bringing in an additional £20,000 a year income. Councillor Chenchy's amendment does not mention any replacement marketing spend. The equivalent commercial advertising spend would be around £5,000 per issue, or alternatively a fall-off in council income. It's therefore unlikely that it would achieve the net savings she believes. The second proposal is to reduce area committee budgets by £40,000 a year. But when we reduced area committee budgets last year, Tory councillors were up in arms. At this year's overview and scrutiny budget meeting, Councillor Dedman was insistent that he did not want area committee budgets cut further. When area committee budgets were first introduced by Councillor Chenchy herself, she set them at a level £140,000 higher than what she now regards as acceptable. And I have to say, her point about certainly South West area committee spending is incorrect. First of all, she says we've got £30,000 left. In actual fact, it's £20,000. And what she doesn't take into account is that there was a carry forward from previous years. So in actual fact, the South West Area Committee this year has spent more than its annual budget, and I noticed an email that Councillor Chenchy responded to only today, giving her agreement to a further £4,000 worth of South West Area Committee budget spending. Area committees are doing good work. This year they helped to bring about projects such as landscaping work at Upper Orwell Street, new play equipment at Cherry Tree Recreation Ground, and a new skate park at White House Park. The final proposal is to abolish special responsibility allowances for area committee chairs. But they were all in favour of these allowances when Tory councillors were chairing area committees, and all of them men, if I recall. A Conservative councillor was the first to claim his allowance. In fact, he responded so quickly it gave rise to a naming of a new unit of time, the Stewart. This being the infinitesimally small period of time between a Tory councillor being told they're eligible for an allowance and then claiming it. The fact is that area committee chairs do so much more than just chairing committee meetings. A great deal of work goes on outside the formal committee meeting, though I have to say, Mr Mayor, given some of the recent meetings we've had in the South West, I think our chair would deserve his allowance just for that. So, do we believe the Tories would reduce the number of annual editions if they were running the council? No, we don't. Do we believe the Tories would reduce area committee budgets if they were running the council? No, we don't. Do we believe the Tories would abolish special responsibility allowances for area committees chairs if they were running the council? No, we don't, and more to the point, neither does anybody else. This is just another bit of political posturing by the Tories. Nobody believes that they'd actually do this if they were running the council. They might think this would be popular, but people in Ipswich are not stupid. They know that if government funding is reduced and council tax funding is frozen, services are going to be cut. Freezing council tax just stores up trouble. It means there will be cuts in the future and that they will be bigger than they need it to be. At each local election, the Tories promise to lower the level of council tax. At each election, we promise to try and protect services. The result has been the same in every election since 2011. We win and they lose.
Thank you. Councillor Kane, have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
not everybody in the room would like what I've got to say. They would appreciate the brevity. The Tory amendment has the ability this year of actually being commended in the fact that it's actually co-ed. The Section 151 has been given sufficient time to ensure it has up, and no doubt help with that. However, whilst we have some sympathy with the Tory amendment regarding area committee chairman and some reduction in grants to the area committees and so on, and the ambition to set 0% council tax, we cannot support the amendment because it returns the budgets to a position less than that we felt was acceptable when we were in power, and therefore will be critically supported.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Gould.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Chensey was referring to this as an alternative budget. It certainly isn't that. As I see it, it's just a short-term political gimmick, in fact. If this was an alternative budget, it would be addressing the full 3 years of the medium-term financial plan. It wouldn't just be addressing 1 year. What we should be seeing is an updated version of the tables that appear on page 69 and 70 of the agenda that show the effect of these proposals across the full 3 years. Councillor Chensey has pointed out herself that these amount to hundreds of thousands of pounds. And I did read earlier in the week that there were some ideas to deal with this. I thought that meant we were going to hear them tonight. We haven't heard them tonight, however. What we've heard were a couple of proposals around reducing the number of councillors and portfolio holders, but they don't even appear in the amendment. They're not properly covered here. And I think, like some of the other savings that have been put forward, they may be to some extent illusory. As we know, the process for setting councillors' allowances is based around the independent remuneration panel. They take into account the amount of work that councillors or portfolio holders have to do in order to take this council forward. So if there are fewer of them, it may well follow that they recommend an increase in allowances, and therefore I don't believe that the savings that are being proposed there may be necessarily as great as suggested. But, why on earth spring that on tonight? Why not actually write it into the amendment in a proper way? Why was that not put forward in the paper that's been tabled here and been looked at by the Section 151 officer? Why has that just suddenly appeared tonight? I think the other thing, Mr. Mayor, is the fact is we now have the most open budget process that we've ever had at this council. We're not living any longer in the sort of council carnival years where things are put together in secret and not shared with any more than 1 or 2 councillors. Now we've got portfolio holder working groups where things are discussed. We have an open meeting of the Overview Scrutiny Committee where the proposals are discussed. These ideas could have come forward at any time over a period of months. They didn't have to turn up just in the last few days or even in the last 10 minutes. That's not really the right way of going about it, in my view. So I don't think that this is an alternative budget. I think it's a short-term political gimmick and not really to be taken seriously, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a few issues with the amendment that I'd like to go over. First of all, with regards to the angle, from what we've heard about the effect increase in yields, it should be that the reaching the most vulnerable people. We live in a age, not everyone everyone has the ability to go on social media on the website. We need to make sure that the information is going to everyone. And so by seeing this, the people that would need the information can improve the angle. With regards to the area committees, my colleague Councillor Chensey is also going to start questions himself. For this period of time, we've funded amazing projects within community arts around mental health, youth provision in the Triangle, we've had bus shelters, and it survived some transition to help victims of sexual abuse. Now with our funders, we are down to our last 20,000, and that's including the carry-over, as I said. Now, with this budget cut, you will not be able to fund these operations, and people would have missed out. And as regards to the area chairs on myself, my time is not spent just at 5 meetings. My time is spent, my lunchtime at work, going and reading the offices, discussing issues, answering the 15 emails I get every lunchtime, going and placing them around. Yes, it is on top of my work in the council, I have full-time work, but it's so much more
just preface my observations on the amendment by saying to the extent to which I support the proposal for the budget and the plan put forward by Councillor Cook and Councillor Ellesmere, under whose leadership over recent years the Council has managed to protect services and encourage and support social, economic, environmental and cultural development in the town in the face of the most difficult economic circumstances and surprising, well maybe not surprising, pressure from central government in terms of the attack on local authority budgets. The amendment, the budget therefore is well balanced and well considered. The amendment, I would just say, in the short time that I've been a member of this council, there have been two activities in which I've been engaged, which have, to me, struck me as particularly important. One is on Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I'm sure everybody would agree the importance of having that oversight and scrutiny of the actions and intentions of those with executive powers and responsibilities. The second thing that has struck me as incredibly important is the activities of area committees. And the significance of this is that these are such an important way in which we inform, engage, involve and enable people to participate in the work of the council, and this at a time when we hear increasingly the extent to which people feel completely detached from politics and from politicians. So I find it quite surprising then that of all the things to look for amongst the council budget, that this amendment should arrive at precisely that point, which engages people in the most important ways. If these are the ways in which we can connect with people, if these are the ways in which we can engage, involve, keep people the opportunity to put forward ideas, to have those carried through, to take some responsibilities for them, this amendment seems precisely to undermine that ability. If I were a little bit more cynical, I might suggest that this was even contemptuous of the residents who we want to engage, who we want to involve, and that the area committees are the precise way that we have of doing it. So between them, the angle, which is important in keeping people informed about what's going on, the budgets, which give people the opportunities to engage, to be involved, to put up their ideas and to be involved with us, and the chair's allowances, which signal the importance of this activity, and without which we would have a low degree of involvement. Taken together, seems to me, flies in the face of all the things that we're trying to do in terms of engagement, encouraging anyone who is supportive of localism in politics would not wish to associate themselves with this amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought maybe after last year, this year's amendment would not be the car crash it was of last year, where we had a leader ousted, the deputy leader and the future leader failed to turn up, abstentions, votes against. So this time, we think we'll have an amendment they will agree with. As Councillor Eldon has already pointed out, Councillor Denman certainly doesn't agree with this amendment because he said there must be no cuts to area forum monies. Obviously, I know those area committees, but it does take a long time for service to get up to date with modern terminology. But, more importantly, Mr. Cameron is supporters. So if you remember back to those great days of 2010 for their promises, we had a certain thing called the Big Society, about getting residents and local groups to do this. What a great way of doing it, the area committee is helping. Big Society disappeared down the drain for Mr. Cameron, and obviously the Conservative councillors don't agree with it either. Now, next week, our three Gibson councillors want us to spend up to £4,000 improving Arundel Way, a project that I wholeheartedly support. I was quite surprised they quickly want to spend £4,000, but obviously they knew what was coming up in the year budget, and their amendment and wanted to spend it before the money was cut. The Conservatives often, and Councillor Chentry in particular, accuse Labour of spending money, or today in the new terminology, wanton spending. So we've been careful over these years, not just spending it for the sake of it. Now, I'm a fan of council locality, which I believe can be used as a pure bribe. So we have been careful. We've looked at projects that can help. We have an active lives project in the North East, but that is over 3 years, that project, we have committed spending for over 3 years, not just in 1 year. So what we're going to say to them now, oh, by the way, sorry, Conservatives want to reduce your money, you can't carry on that good work with our senior citizens. So I thought you like looking after senior citizens. Mr. Cameron seems to like trying to bribe them every week. And we have got money left. One of the reasons we've got money left is because of the incompetence of the county council. Because we, Councillor Gage, put forward a project supported by Labour and Conservative councillors to improve cycling to Sygate Lane School, or Sygate Primary School is the correct term. Guess what? The county council still haven't billed us after 9 months, even after numerous emails and letters. So that's why we've got lots of money, because the county got that much to spare, they can let us keep it. But then, there's the money we've brought in. Councillor Elford mentioned the revenue brought through the marketing through the annual. A conservative estimate, and that's not conservative as a conservative guy, conservative estimate is area committee supporting over £500,000 in external funding into this borough. For us, in Bixley, obviously the Conservative ward, they have seen nearly £80,000 brought in with the Cherry Lane Park, which they were very pleased with. So the money we brought forward for the area committee saw match funding from county councillors of both Labour and Conservative in all 3 wards, and then a large chunk of funding from the Viridor land bill. This would not have happened without the pump funding from the area committee. Now, in the Dales, they were so impressed, that's in the past there was another Conservative ward, so impressed they want to do the same thing. Well, I look forward to Councillor Vickery and Goldsmith telling them that it won't be happening now because there's no money to go into the pot. Chairing committees. 5 area committees, Councillor Cheshire. Obviously you don't go to the North East Partnership route or North East South West one, but that's another 5 meetings I chair, and I believe in the central it's furthermore, even more than 5 area chair committee meetings. So, I do agree with one thing, we could save some money though, we could save some money on our annual. We could cut down to 10 copies. The 10 copies that Councillor Stewart wanted very quickly when his pictures in it, so we can send it to his family. And Village Stewart, he called for their extra 10 copies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this, was it amendment? One of the reasons why I do is because, unfortunately, this country and residents in Ipswich were left, I think was it Gordon Brown, was it like left a note in the Charter with no money there? And unfortunately, this government has actually sorted things out. I mean, it looks like that I might be getting a dividend from Lloyd's Bank. Was it with what I read in the paper today? Was it? We brought all. There's been one or two things said, not just about myself, but about things. Firstly, the angle. What a waste of money. I must say, you assume that everybody gets the angle. I don't get the angle. The only time I get the angle is if I go to Grafton House and pick one up. A number of local residents, how do I find out about the council? They come to local councils. And, I would say, you assume that the angle goes to every resident in this town. I don't believe that it does. Was it with the area committees? I've always maintained that area chairmen should not be paid. We are paid enough to be councillors. End of story. And the way that I see it, and was it certainly this group? We've had some, interesting debates. With chairs, if the Tories had been running, this council, certainly area chairman would not have been having a remuneration. Another thing about area committees, and I find it very, very upsetting indeed, is when local residents come up to me after a meeting and say to me, well, why did you agree to that? Well, unfortunately my hands are tied. I must say, I represent Holywell's ward. Unfortunately, there's only 3 Tory councillors in the South East. Whatever I say or do, as I explain to people, I am outvoted. Which brings me on to another thing. I say I sit on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's supposed to be non-political rubbish. It is. was it I brought up in the last overview of the scrutiny meeting why it is that this council is committing itself to £10 million to buy the brick sugar site. Now, if you look at the front here, there's some comments, was it the Chamber of Commerce and Central, was it the Ipswich Central, and it says, that they welcome the innovation of, brick sugar, providing it is not developed for out-of-town retailing. That's what's going to happen, sorry. That is what's going to happen, because you won't get investment out of town unless they've got retailing. You're seeing it all the way around, and the rate we're going to go in, and we're going to end up with nothing. I was actually delighted to actually hear Councillor Ross actually say that we're actually going to get a Tory administration next year. He actually said it, when we cut the budget next year. So you're obviously quite confident that we'll actually be running this council and things will be improved. Thank you.
Councillor Stroke.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of points. I just want was Councillor Ellsworth suggesting that the Conservative Party used the angle for political purposes? He seemed to be suggesting that before. I'd like to see the evidence. I can certainly provide evidence.
Do you want me to provide evidence, Mr. Mayor? I don't think I actually mentioned it, but I'm quite happy to provide evidence. If you want me to do that, Mr. Stewart?
You'll get your chance to speak in the moment.
I'm on that.
Councillor Ellsworth, get the chance in the moment.
Because, as I was saying, I can provide plenty of suggestions to use like that now. And the second point was, in the North East, on the area committees, when Councillor Pope was chair, he waived his allowance when Councillor Ross, the mouth of the North East returned to chair, he took it straight back. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's interesting that for the fourth year in a row, the Labour budget has been presented by the leader. He still hasn't got any confidence in his finance book.
Please.
And I apologise to Councillor Knowles here, but I have to say, Gordon Brown let Alistair Darling present his budget. Does it apply in Ipswich, honestly? What Councillor Ellesmere forgets when he's saying that George Osborne has cut the deficit by only 50%, what he's failing to realise and say to everybody is that we're in this mess because of the Labour government's great recession. They're the ones who put us in the economic mess that we're in at the moment. And it's only the government's long-term economic plan which is in fact being effective in improving the situation. Let me remind you one or two things. Unemployment down very significantly. Inflation rapidly falling. Last month, CPI inflation was only 0.3%. Food prices down 2.8% January on January. Petrol prices down 30%. Gas and electricity bills cut. At the same time, wages are picking up. The Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee has said that earnings in the private sector went up by over 2% last month, and they forecast an increase of 3.5% over the year 2015. In fact, in this very budget, we are proposing to increase the salaries of staff by 2.2%. So, it's perhaps not surprising that the Independent Institute of Fiscal Studies has said British families will enjoy the biggest rise in spending power for more than a decade. And all that is down to George Osborne and the government's long-term economic plan. Wages are now increasing faster than prices, and people's take-home pay is improving. It's further helped, of course, by the fact that the government's income kick in next April. But unfortunately in Ipswich, people are not able to benefit from any increase in take-home pay because any increase is rapidly hoovered up by the Labour administration of Ipswich Borough Council. Let me give you the example. Council rates up 2.2%, 7 times CPI. Council tax proposed to go up 1.93%, 6 times CPI. Fees and charges to go up to bring in an additional 3%, 10 times CPI. They've even put taxi fares up by 2% at a time when petrol prices have fallen by 30%. By golly, they do look after the interests of council taxpayers in Ipswich, don't they? Now, Councillor Ellsworth has been a leading advocate of freezing the prices of gas and electricity. But what happens when it comes to the charges for which he himself is completely responsible? He puts them up. He doesn't freeze the council tax. He doesn't freeze council rates. He puts them up. The word that comes to my mind there is hypocrisy. We have shown that there is no need for the council tax to be increased next year. No need at all. If this administration took advantage of the government's council tax freeze grant and the small economies that Councillor Chensky has suggested for the annual and area committees, there would be no need whatsoever to increase council tax. Council tax could be frozen quite easily. I would also make the point that this benign inflation environment that we have at the moment is worth £500,000 to the Borough Council, and that's admitted only smallly, of course, in the NTFP. Mr. Mayor, thank you. I will. I want to say that I support this amendment because it is common sense that it is not necessary to increase the council tax next year. What this administration is doing is actually making the council taxpayers of Ipswich pay for the privilege of increasing their own council tax. And it's doing that because it's refusing to take the grant available.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to inject a word of caution about this amendment. Raising the council tax is a familiar phrase to me as a county councillor. I've heard it for the last 2 years and for a few years before that over at Suffolk County Council. And what that really means is about managing demand on services, keeping services in check, cutting services as much as possible, removing support to the community. We've seen it only this month at the County Council, full council looking at their budget cuts of 38 million. And there we see the proposals stark contrast to what we have this evening in front of us. A closure of 2 children's centres in Ipswich to save £64,000 a year, but in reality to cost us considerably more than loss of support for those families in the years to come. We see a 30% cut to grants to the voluntary sector. The very organisations which the County Council relies on heavily to provide the services they no longer provide themselves, again substantial cost in the years to come. And a £6 million cut to public transport across the county, one which is particularly harsh in my opinion because it cuts the vital services to the young and old to provide transport, to get about, to get a job, to be able to live a life of independence. Stark contrast to what we have here before us. In short, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, we have a budget here in front of us which is about balancing the books whilst protecting the very services that are vital to this town, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
network, and they have nothing in the Ipswich, and yet it also goes out to like London and Kesgrave. So they're spending money, it's going out to non-Ipswich residents. Regarding this, a lot of our fellow councillors on the other side have been suggesting that reducing the area committee funding by 2,500 award will be the end of the world, and there's no projects funded thereafter. It's silly. Yes, a 40,000 reduction across the town to 9,000 award. There'll still be a large budget still there to fund projects. And as Councillor Ross has pointed out, there is external funding which we can match fund with, etc. And that will still happen. So it won't be the end of the world just because there's 40,000 less across the various wards. One thing we can do there is because more people turning up for the Parliamentary area committees. Some have better, great numbers turning up. In other areas, very few people turn out. My final point is about the chair's allowances. We've given 6 months' notice to the existing chairman that we would be proposing to remove their chairman's allowances, and therefore they've got that period of time to consider resigning as chairman of those committees, and other councillors who are prepared to do the work at no fee can step forward to be elected. Thank you.
No other councillors indicate to speak on the amendment. So, Councillor Jensen, would you like to
first of all, I'd like to say to talk about things that we did 4 years ago, or how we would progress. It's just ridiculous. It's apples and pears. It's ridiculous. 4 years ago was different, and things are getting tighter, and we're all having to rethink. The whole hysteria and the melodrama about this alternative recommendation, and I have been calling it alternative recommendation, is what we come to expect from that side and from the left. It's ridiculous to talk about the 3 suggestions we've made being so dreadful for the residents of Ipswich. I'm going to look into that camera and I'm going to ask the residents, honestly, just listen to my summary, the 3 things, and see if you think it's being dreadful to the residents. It's just ridiculous. I can't take it seriously. Secondly, the angle. It is hardly ever read. Either that or thrown in the bin. It's a waste of money. £8,500 per edition, residents of Ipswich. See if you think it's worthwhile. The here's becoming more popular is because of word of mouth, because it is such a fantastic service. I run a business. I get all my work from word of mouth. I don't advertise at all. It's not needed to use social media properly, and Councillor Ellsby would like to think about using this Twitter account, so I don't think he actually uses it very often. I'm not going to train. The officers will do that. There is social media, there's blogging, there's the website, there's all sorts of ways. It's just ridiculous what we're hearing here. Then we go on to the area committee money. This is absolutely right. I mean, the way we were talking, 2,500 per ward per year. And Councillor Ellsmere talks about the 90,000 that was brought forward. Actually, that just shores up my case. We had 90,000 brought forward from the previous year. And I am the only Tory councillor in the whole of the South West, and there have been things I disagreed with. One of them was cleaning in the back of a whole load of shops in Gipping, where I think the shopkeepers should take responsibility for their own cleaning. That was £3,000 there. That's the one we would have done without the following year. Just ridiculous. Regarding Councillor Chisholm's comment, I have the greatest respect for Councillor Chisholm, and I know he works very hard, so I'm not going to make any comment there, but it doesn't change my mind. But I think that now is not the time to have an allowance, and to keep citing Councillor Stewart. I myself at that time thought it was the right thing to do, but that was because we didn't really understand what it was going to entail. We were the two who did think there should be allowance, but I've since changed my mind. My group have always thought that there should be an allowance. So perhaps a review of the hours that are actually spent, that the councillors are actually spending, is something that we should be looking at. Councillor Ross, well, what can I say? I've started to turn off because I've heard it all before. To call this amendment a car crash is just wishful thinking on your part, something to tweet about for tomorrow, no doubt. And it's not just a joke. We're probably doing it right now. It is far from a the people and what they're saying. It is being ratified by the officers. It's perfectly okay, and I will repeat it for the residents. Reduce the Ipswich angle to 2 additions, £51,000. Reduce the area committee funding by £2,500 or £40,000. Remove the allowance paid to area committees, £18,000 actually over the year. But more importantly, Ipswich residents, £136,000 coming from the government that this town can spend, that they're just dismissing completely and not having anything to do with. I rest my case.
Thank you. Next, I'll be 5 minutes public reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The word that came to mind with a number of people speaking tonight from the opposition benches, and the word was delusional. Councillor Carmel, if you listen to him, we are living in a new golden age where everybody's better off. Things are rosy. That's not what I hear when I go out and speak to people on the doorstep, and I'm pretty sure that's not what you hear either. He talks about the success of the government's economic strategy. They've borrowed more than £200 billion more than they said they would in 2010. If that is success, I'd hate to see what failure looks like. He talks about us raising council tax too much. The government is increasing business rates by 2% this year, more than us. Rail fares are going up by RPI inflation, significantly more than what we are raising council tax by. Now, Councillor Stroop talks about the angle and it being politically biased. Well, it certainly was where his administration was running the council, because there was an edict that there should be no photos of any Labour councillors appearing there. Councillor Stroop, go through the back editions, look for pictures of opposition councillors. You won't find any at all when you're not running the council. This year, now we're running the council, you'll be able to spot a Tory councillor in just about every angle. It's a small picture, but it'll be in there nonetheless. Now, we had another example from Councillor Chenchi of something where she's saying something, they do something now, where when they were running the council, it was exactly the opposite. And this was to reduce the number of executive members to 5. Now, I just had a quick look back, and when they lost control of the council, there are actually 9 members in the executive. We reduced it by 1 to 8. And I remember back even further than that, when there were 10 members of the executive, and one of them, who was a non-portfolio holder, was paid just for sitting on the executive, not chairing it, just sitting on it and getting exactly as much as an area committee chair gets now. So, Councillor Chenchi, if she is so concerned about councillors' allowances, she gets an allowance as leader of the Conservative group. It is exactly the same as an area committee chair, and she doesn't chair a single meeting. If that is Councillor Chenchi's benchmark by whether a councillor deserves a special responsibility allowance or not, then the only honourable thing for her to do is to give up a special responsibility allowance. I don't believe she should do that, because I know I was leader of the opposition and I know how much work it takes up, but I also know how much work an area committee chair takes up as well. And to belittle them and to try and defend their own special responsibility allowance, I think is completely out of order, Mr. Mayor. The amendment is just pure political posturing, just as we saw on the rent rise. There's no way the Tories would do any of this if they were running the council, and we should just back vote it down, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
There will now be a recorded vote, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. So the recorded votes on the amendment to council, please clearly say for, against, or possibly abstain. Councillor Can? No. That's against. For, against, or abstain. Councillor Can. Thank you. Councillor Carter? For. Councillor Chenchi? For. Councillor Chisholm? Councillor Clark? Against. Councillor John Cook? Against. Councillor Martin Cook?
Against.
Councillor Denman? For. Councillor Abraham? Against. Councillor Ellesmere?
Against.
Councillor Fern?
Against.
Councillor French? Against. Councillor Gage? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Gibbs, Councillor Goldsmith, Councillor Goonan, Councillor Albert Grant, Councillor Tracy Grant, Councillor Holsant, Councillor Hopgood, Councillor Jones, Councillor Kirby, Councillor Cridewolf, Councillor Knowles, Councillor Leader, Councillor Lockington, Councillor McCartney, Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Maguire, Councillor Maguire, Councillor Knowles, Councillor Phillips, Councillor Powell, Councillor Quinton, Councillor Riley, Councillor Ross, Councillor Rudkin, Councillor Smart, Councillor Panstewart, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Street, Councillor Stowe, Councillor Pickering, Councillor Whittle, Councillor Wright.
That is lost. We will now continue the debate of the standard motion.
Very, very briefly, Mr. Mayor, just to say that the Liberal Democrats will be supporting the substantive motion. We have some quibbles, but frankly, the Church to mention it that we need to pass a budget tonight. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Phillips.
I just wanted to point out a few areas of the report, just to highlight. On page 22, it talks about partnership working. And it says that we're doing some partnership working with Iceland. We know that was a loss-making service. So it is all that we're doing over. I'm sure there's many other partnership organisations we could sort of be doing a bit more work with in the kind of 12 months and thereafter to sort of try and make projects and things. We know that the vast majority of the South East Crime Commissioner is doing more partnership working. This report in this area doesn't really make much reference to bereavement services and race saver, which are providing were losing a lot of money last year. I suspect they probably still are. On page 24, in 3.34, I just have some concerns here that it says a lot of items included in the programme being financed. Specifically, since the items and projects which require further consideration, so I'm hoping that the administration will be able to elaborate on that in the coming months. On page 37, it talks about more revenue being achieved from the special fees and charges. It doesn't seem very specific, just a very passing point. I also want to point out that the local Labour Party hasn't read what the UK economy is doing. I mean, in the part of this report, there's a lot of stuff from the OBR. Clearly, there are challenges, but there's a lot more that can be done. It's not happening. This year, in 2014, we had the highest UK growth in the world, 2.6%. Whereas the party opposite their leader is zero, is hardly around France, and their growth is at 0.4%. In the UK, we've created 3 million jobs over the last 4 or 5 years. It's actually proportionally better than the USA. Except more currently, there's only job reductions in the public sector. The report is slightly out of date now because it was written before last week's improvements in the public sector finances. We have a largest January surplus in terms of tax receipts in 8 years. We've got 1.85 million people in work. RPI is down to 0.3%. Wages are picking up 2.5% in the private sector, including 3.2% in the construction sector. State pensions are up. People are better off with the increase in the tax threshold by at least £850 a year. We've had petrol duty free since 2011, that's saving hundreds of pounds a year for people who drive. There are people on fixed income, such as pensioners, and they will struggle to pay this extra increase in the council tax. At least 100 other councils across the country which are taking the council tax freeze grant this year. The disappointment of this council.
We have 1 minute left, Councillor.
So I disagree with this budget proposed by this administration. For those reasons, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 45 of the papers, there is a list of achievements, and I'm particularly proud and pleased to say that several of those come under the portfolio that I hold. We have been determined to improve the quality of the services that we provide to people and the offer, the cultural offer in particular that people have. Councillor Jones earlier on referred to things as being transformational, and the power of art and culture can be exactly that, transformational. And I'm particularly proud that the 6 Arts Council national portfolio organisations which we are proud to host here in Ipswich, more I believe than Cambridge and Norfolk combined. We're particularly proud that we've been able to increase the money that we provide for them so that they can continue to provide services locally, regionally, nationally and internationally. We have some fantastic work we've produced with the New Wolsey, Dance East, by Gecko, the theatre company that works with Dance East, with Tilted, who work with Dance East as well, and with, of course, Eastern Angles. And we are really, really pleased to welcome the Cassisi company to Ipswich as well, with their striking performance art. And we are really pleased to see that the way in which, and our ambition for the museum project in particular, will be enhanced by the work with those partners. In sporting world, we're really pleased with the opening of a new gym on the waterfront. We are investing in our parks and we are maintaining the services that we know people love and enjoy. And we're doing this because we understand our community. Over the last few weeks, we have seen the sad and sorry spectacle of Suffolk County Council closing services in this town that they know nothing about. They haven't even listened to their own consultation. A cabinet member telling me that it takes 10 minutes to push a buggy from the waterfront up to the Reg Driver Centre in Christchurch Park because he has so little knowledge of the area he's talking about, or indeed absolutely no knowledge of what I might know about it as well. And I offer you back in cost to the steward another measurement. My colleague, Councillor Martin, sitting at the back there, wrote a very eloquent open letter to the Cabinet of Suffolk County Council and sent it to all members. After the debate yesterday, where they considered the call-in that we'd had, a debate, I call it a debate, it took less than 4 minutes to dismiss the consideration of the call-in. After that, Councillor Gordon-Jones replied to Councillor Martin's email with a completely blank email to all councillors. So I offer you back the Gordon, and that's the capacity of a Conservative councillor to reply to something with nothing at all. He has nothing to say. The county council's malfunction. Well, I'm glad you agree with me there, Councillor Carnell, because that's exactly what it is. What I'm trying to show that this council's budget is well thought out, it considers the needs of its people, it understands the needs of its people, and it responds to what they say, unlike those who come from Felixstowe and tell us how to drive around our town, or not, and those who come from wherever, and I don't know where, and have the kind of children's services we need. So if it's malfunction you want, I'm glad you spotted where it is. I commend this budget because it's a budget for Ipswich people.
Thank you. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. thing that I'm very proud of in this budget, one because it's part of the portfolio that I'm trying to learn, but also because it's in my own ward, is the rebuilding of the Ransoms Pavilion. One, because I'm a sports fan. One, because I played football on there as a kid and I dreamt of playing for Ipswich, and then dreamt of playing Ransoms, and then dreamt of playing for anyone. And also, I was there the last time Suffolk won the minor campus cricket, which was on the same day that England beat Australia. That wasn't just because Councillor Stroke had a very inaccurate pop at me earlier. I've always liked beating Australians anyway. For 4 years, we've had to face or listen to Tory smears and lies in Rushmere Estate. Last year, one of the 3 Tory candidates in Rushmere, because we tend to have a number of people trying not to stand in Rushmere, for some reason they don't want to stand against me, telling residents right up to May last year that we were going to build council houses on Ransoms. Obviously one of those same people was telling people we were going to knock down council houses even for this, so I was always slightly confused. But I was involved with Ransoms very early on, when we were brought in because of the poor mismanagement of Ransoms, when the bowls club, the dancing club, the table tennis club were evicted. We had to take it over. We took it over and we promised residents of Ipswich that we would build a new pavilion.
What's this got to do with the budget? Really, what has it got to do with it? Nothing. Nothing.
Please, Councillor Ross, will you carry on?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. But we did build this. Have you finished muttering yet, Councillor?
No.
That's good, alright. I'll ignore it.
Can we please stick to the debate and not...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we went through with it. We've worked hard. We've looked at design, sent it back, got the design right. We've worked with Sport England. We've worked with the FA. We've worked with English Cricket. And I'm very pleased that now planning has accepted the proposal, the executive have got the funding, and we are now going to build a new pavilion of Ransoms. I thought the Conservatives would welcome it. One, because it proves that their lies were wrong for the last 4 years, but Mr. Governor has now moved the Children's Centre into a Red Driver Centre. This will now give another opportunity of a great building of all things to close in another Children's Centre. I commend this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was very interested to hear about Councillor Ross's soccer ambitions. Very sorry, but he's ended up playing for the Labour Party. He didn't even make a conference league. I did want to...
Please. Can we just stick to...
I did want to make 2 comments, Mr. Mayor, on the budget that we now have. And I think there are warning signs there of the cavalier attitude of the Labour group to other people's money, to the council taxpayers' money. The peer review that we had at this council some time ago drew attention to two of the weaknesses, and many more, but I'll concentrate on 2 of the weaknesses in the administration's financial management. And that was income generation and the use of reserves. Let me just look at each of these in the light of the latest budget. Income generation first. It's easy to balance the books if you assume over-generous income generation, which is exactly what this administration has done. And the budget shows that in the current year, many income generation targets have been missed. The events budget, £90,000 short. Not surprising, perhaps, when they couldn't even run a beer festival at a profit. Sports and leisure, £171,000 short. No doubt an achievement of which Councillor Rutkin is proud. Trade waste, £105,000 short. Bereavement services, £120,000 short. In all, income failed to reach its targets, getting on to £650,000 in this year's budget. And of course, all that money has to come from reserves. Money that didn't come from income has to come from the reserves. Now, according to the figures that we have before us, in the current year, £1 million more has been taken from reserves than originally forecast. Instead of £1.5 million being taken from the reserves, £2.5 million is being taken. Of course, this is all hidden away carefully in the tables towards the end of the budget. And if you look at the working balance figures, you will see in March 2014 there were £12 million there, and by March 2018, with this administration, it will be down to £4,625,000. A 60% fall in 4 years. It's not bad going, is it? 60% fall in reserves, in their own figures, Now, Councillor Alden has parroted out his usual point about the reserves and our previous administration. All I would say to him is that when he took over, we left him £9.5 million worth of reserves. That's more than twice as much as he thinks he's going to get in 2018-19. So it wasn't a bad deal, really, was it? It wasn't too bad a performance by the previous administration. A reduction in council tax, not a freezing, not an increase below inflation, an actual reduction in council tax, and had some reserves, a golden legacy which Councillor Ellsworth will soon get through.
You have 1 minute left, Councillor.
Yeah. In that 1 minute, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to make the point that if you look at the prudential indicators, hidden away on pages 109 and 110, you will see some warning bells there. You'll notice, first of all, the Council's borrowing need will more than double between 2013 and 2018. It will go up from £16.5 million to over 35 million. So it's more than double in 5 years. And also, inevitably as a result of that, the percentage of the revenue budget that will be taken up in debt repayment, paying interest on capital expenditure, will go up from 5.23% in 2013 to 9.49% in 2017. Almost
your thumbs up, Councillor.
The warning signs are there. Labour, more spending, more borrowing, more debt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It always seemed to me that the measure of success for Councillor Carnell was how much money he could cut, even when he didn't need to cut it. And by his own comments this evening, when he talks about reserves that he's so happy to have left, that is, funds he could have used but chose to keep sitting there instead of using for the benefit of Ipswich people in the town. And I think what is remarkable about this budget is the fact that in very straitened economic times, this administration has made every effort to invest in Ipswich, in its town, in its future. In my own portfolio, we're working with UCS and Suffolk County Council to establish an innovation centre on the waterfront, a new centre that will house specialist facilities such as a life science centre, digital and design and engineering lab, and a teacher training academy for STEM subjects, science, technology, maths and engineering. And it will also provide the business community with specialist facilities. Our inward investment programme is planned at account managing 92 companies in Ipswich who together employ around 11,000 people. And our aim is to retain the existing jobs for Ipswich people and to support the companies in expanding the number of jobs they provide. In this, we're developing partnerships with our neighbouring local authorities to work together to protect and expand employment in the whole greater Ipswich area. And those we think are worthwhile use of money that bring us funding from other areas like the LEP, because we are seen to put our money in Ipswich first. We've invested in education and skills with currently 21 apprentice starts through our brokerage scheme, and our student bursary scheme is now in its third year and it's helped 12 local students, all of them first in their family, ever to go to university to attend UCS. No one has dropped out, and the courses that they study range from bioscience to nutrition to computer game design this year. And lastly, Mr. Mayor, we've adopted the Ipswich Garden Suburb SPD to ensure that Ipswich has the range and volume of housing that we need, not only to support growth, but to house our own children and grandchildren over the next 20 years. And having this SPD means our officers can, on our behalf, control the provision of infrastructure, including schools and community facilities, the layout and design, and the inclusion of enhancement of green spaces on what is the most important housing site in Ipswich for the next 20 years. Without this plan, any developer could submit an application, and we would find it very difficult to resist inappropriate housing and inadequate infrastructure, something the opposition parties, unaccountably to me, never understood when they opposed its adoption, Mr. Mayor. So I'm very pleased to endorse this. I think it is, in what are very difficult times, it is a kind of statement of hope and a vote of confidence in the town and its future.
Thank you. Two more speakers, and then we'll go to the right reply. Councillor Diggory.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been a lot of political hype tonight, which is inevitable before the coming election, I suppose. But I would just like to highlight the comments from the Ipswich Chamber of Commerce, where they say, commenting on the budget, that it's difficult to easily assess whether the budget is good for economic and business growth, as it isn't easy to identify what proportion of funds are allocated to, amongst others, economic development, inward investment, training in skills and transport. And I don't see much evidence in the budget as it's been presented that these problems are going to be addressed in any significant way. We have a failing town centre, and it's time that certainly with regards to economic development, had someone in charge that would actually do what they were doing. Put some commitment in.
Councillor Cook.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. It can seem seductive to have a 0% council tax increase. It's a seduction which our Police and Crime Commissioner fell to when he pledged prior to his election not to increase the precept on policing. And it's one which we're now seeing that we're paying for this year in a reduction that's coming to the number of police officers. Drawing up trouble in his first two budgets to deliver a cut of 63 police officers in the forthcoming one. We're reaching a stage, Mr. Mayor, where the best chance that we'll have of seeing a constable in Ipswich is on the walls of Christchurch Mansion. I guess amused by Councillor Carmel. He was quick to mention the cut he made to council tax, I'm sure it was his handiwork. He didn't mention it was only 1 year of the cut, and it was in the year when he and his colleagues knew they were going to lose control of the council, to leave a little present for the incoming administration of a lower tax base for future years. Indeed, the year before, in the 2010-2011 year, the level of council tax increase was...
Point of information, please, Mr. Mayor. Was there this administration left money in the bank?
Please, carry on.
I'm not sure about that point of information, Mr. Mayor. In 2010-2011, the increase which Councillor Carnell moved was almost to the same fractional percentage, the same as tonight. In the previous year, it was substantially more than the increase tonight. Now, you mentioned hypocrisy. I know it's in the earlier debate, and we maybe not on this one, but that seems to me to be the definition of hypocrisy. Somebody who proposes one thing, but when they've got the power to do it, they do something else. He also referred in this debate to a cavalier attitude, and it seems to me to be a cavalier attitude when you increase the council tax when you think you're going to be running a council, but cut it and cut the funds available to the council to spend in the future when you know you're going to lose. Thanks so much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ellsworth,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know whether Councillor Carr has just sort of forgotten what he did when he was running the council, but with respect to reserves, the last budget that was tabled by the previous administration when Councillor Carr was in charge showed quite clearly that all the reserves will be gone at the end of 3 years. And so in other words, by now we'd have no more usable reserves. All the money will be spent. To coin a phrase, there will be no more money left. What we're showing in our budget is that our reserves not only last for 3 years, but they last into 4 years. And what we're also showing is at the end of the 3 years, the budget gap is half what it was in Councillor Carnell's last budget. He talks about additional borrowing, but one of the items where we have borrowed, and borrowed significantly, is for the purchase of Grafton House. That was not opposed by Councillor Chenchy on the executive. I recall calling it a no-brainer. I make no comment. But that has brought in significant savings because the borrowing on that is lower than the current rental that we pay. The current rental level, of course, was the one that was negotiated when Councillor Carnell was in charge. But if our budget is so bad, if we are storing up so much in the future, then why is this amendment not meant to do anything about that? I would have expected him to be making cuts, but still increasing council tax because we are storing up so much trouble for the future. It's not actually true, Mr. Mayor, and he knows it. As Councillor Cooper said, we acknowledge that in the last budget of the previous administration, council tax was reduced. But the key word is it was their last budget. They reduced council tax and they lost. And I think that's a big indication that their priorities are not the priorities of the people of Ipswich. Now, I just next like to respond to the points that Councillor Phillips made. I'd like to be honest, I turned it off. when the officer put up that card saying a minute left, I really thought that was the longest minute of my life. But there's just, I just one question. If everything is so good and as rosy as Councillor Phillips says, why have we had our budget cut this year? Why is George Osborne forecasting that we will have our budget cut every year for the next during the next Parliament? That is not something to me that is saying everything is rosy. That's somebody saying to me, somebody who does not actually have a long-term economic plan, but if they did, it's going badly wrong. Now, Mr. Mayor, this budget tonight has been. I've seen two firsts. I think we have had our slightly borrowing mentioned. We've had Councillor Carnell criticising me for moving the budget. So the first were not that we didn't have those. But two firsts were one, that the Liberal Democrats have supported our budget, and as Councillor Camp said, the Church did not support it, and the Church probably not welcome the fact that they've done that. And the second is that the Tories have actually got an amendment in order and accepted, and one that hasn't ripped their group apart. Well done. I was a little bit patronising and sarcastic there. It's not that Councillor Church. Now, Mr. Mayor, just to reiterate our budget, we are keeping the promises that we made when we were first elected in 2011, the promises that we have made to the electorate in every election since then, where they have supposed to left. We are protecting frontline council services. Our budget allows us to do that. We are building new council houses when we are not stopped by the current MP, and we are bringing new jobs and growth to Ipswich. That's what we promised, that's what we're delivering, and that's what we're going to take to the electorate.
So we're now make a recorded vote on 15 in the recommendation in the agenda tonight.
So this is a vote on the substantive budget motion. Should we say clearly for, against, or abstain? Councillor Camp.
Yes.
No, Councillor Clark. Councillor Chenchi. Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Clark. Councillor John Cook. Councillor Martin Cook. Councillor Devlin. Councillor Alakan. Councillor Ellesmere. Councillor Fern. Councillor French. Councillor Gage. Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gibbs. Councillor Goldsmith. Councillor Gooden. Councillor Albert Grant. Councillor Tracy Grant. Councillor Harsons. Councillor Hopgood. Councillor Jones. 4. Councillor Kirby. 4. Councillor Crydle. 4. Councillor Knowles. 4. Councillor Leader. 4. Councillor Lockington. Councillor McCarthy. 4. Councillor MacDonald. 4. Councillor Maguire. Councillor Knowles. 4. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Powell. Councillor Quinton. Councillor Riley. Councillor Ross. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor Smart. Councillor Pam Stewart. Councillor Simpson. Councillor Street. Councillor Studd. Councillor Vickery. Councillor Whittle. And finally Councillor Wright.
That is carried. We now move to agenda item number 8, trade policy statement to date. Councillor Martin Cook.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an annual report. It doesn't require any decision as such. It's just a statement of what the council is already doing, but it is a legal requirement for Local Act 2000 or whatever. Our pay policy statement for 2015-16 is attached to Appendix 1. And for the last 2 years, I've said that we're the most equal council in the East of England, one of the most equal in the country, we still are. In 2011, the Council reviewed fair pay in the public sector, said that the highest paid worker should be paid no more than 20 times as much as the lowest paid worker. Our council, which is 6.7 times that ratio. Council special approval will be required for them to pay more than £100,000 a year to any member of staff at this authority. We do believe in a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, and since we approved last year's statement, we've achieved a great deal in this respect. First of all, of course, we've implemented single status harmonisation by way of a collective agreement that came in on the 1st of April. We've received 4 more recognition from the Living Wage Foundation, and we've increased apprentice pay. On the 1st of April 2014, we brought the single status harmonisation saga to a close. And at the stroke, we swept away many historic pay anomalies, providing a new system which is fit for the future. And I'd like to take this opportunity to commend our officers for all the hard work that they put into making that a smooth and trouble-free transition to the new pay structure. As councillors will know, since we introduced the living wage at Ipswich Borough Council in 2013, we've achieved Living Wage Foundation accreditation for this achievement. We have that in place not just for our own staff, now but for contractors as well. The living wage is currently £7.85 per hour, or the council £15,145 per hour. Paying the living wage is good for productivity and customer service levels of this authority. It's the right thing to do for all our staff, and also has a beneficial impact on the local economy. And we're delighted to set this example, and would love to see more Ipswich employers follow suit. In November, Mr Mayor, the Council took a report on improving apprentice pay. This was a no-brainer for most, but nonetheless we had a memorable debate in which the Tory councillors implied young people should break into any job they could get. That debate didn't come back tonight, that seems to have been laid to rest. I thought we might see that as part of a Tory budget amendment. That wasn't the case. Now it seems to be councillors who should be grateful for any job they can get. Mr Mayor, single status harmonisation, living wage and apprentice pay is a year to be proud of as far as pay policy is concerned.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, Councillor Brown, supporting this. Yeah, I'd like to end on a positive note. I just want to say how fabulous the living wage is. I think Councillor touched on it. It not only enhances quality of work, it reduces absenteeism, reduces turnover of staff, gives working people the opportunity to provide for their families. It also benefits the local economy because it stimulates consumer spending, helps families out benefit because obviously saves people money. As you know, the majority of people who claim benefits are low-paid workers, not unemployed. And I think the same goes with increasing the money for our apprentices, same for the others. So fully support this.
Thank you. Councillor
Quite briefly, and I shall remain professional as I have all evening, unlike Mr Ellsmith, whose rudeness is going to be shown on camera for all the residents to see, and if it's going to be evidenced DVD, I don't think so. I'd just like to say that we obviously understand the importance that this has to be passed tonight, and but we cannot agree in its entirety because of 4.8. And I'm going to make a correction because one of the councillors said that we were against the apprenticeship rise. No, we weren't. We were for the rise for the first year because that brought it up to the minimum wage. What we were against was the following years because they were at the minimum wage and that's where it belongs. So to not be critical, we can't agree with this. We're going to abstain. But also just to make the comment that I don't think that the party understand business and some of the comments they've made, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm not here to educate them, despite some of the nasty little comments that I've had.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Cole.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. As I said right at the start, this is not something that's here for a decision. This is a statement of what the council is already doing, and we've had the debate on apprentice pay. I think we were clear eventually what the Conservative group were proposing. They were suggesting that apprentices in their second year should be paid no more than the reduced national minimum wage rate of £5.13 an hour. We can agree with that. We thought that was wrong. That debate was had. The change will be coming in from the 1st of April. Therefore, the pay policy statement for 2015-16 is a correct statement. I can't see any reason whatever for voting against it, abstaining or anything else. It's a factual statement of the Council's policy. Move the recommendation of 13.1.
Any council approve pay policy statements printed this evening? Those in favour, please show.
Right.
Those against? Abstention? Carried, thank you. We now move to agenda item number 9, this is the change of membership, committee, working groups, etc. Are there any? No? Can we agree with that?
Agreed.
Thank you. That concludes the business of the meeting this evening, and I declare the meeting closed, and I wish you all a safe journey home.